Welcome to the Propertybuyer Podcast, where we explore the world of residential and commercial real estate to help you make better decisions about buying, selling, or investing in all types of property. Join me, Rich Harvey, CEO of propertybuyer.com.au and multi-award-winning buyer's advocate. Our podcast features expert interviews, market trends and insights, and practical tips for navigating the complex world of Australian real estate. Whether you're a home buyer, a seasoned property investor, commercial buyer, developer, or simply curious about the property market, our podcast is for you. Join us as we share our knowledge, strategies and experience and help you achieve your property goals. Well, welcome to another edition of the Propertybuyer Podcast, and today you'll gain some amazing insights into the mind of real estate agents. Buying a property is a very challenging process, and most people underestimate the amount of time and effort it takes to find the ideal property. One of the key aspects of this process is dealing with real estate agents, and many find this part daunting or even intimidating. There's plenty of misconceptions and myths around sales agents, and unfortunately, they rank quite low on the trust scale, according to the annual survey of trusted professions conducted by Roy Morgan Research. But if you're serious about buying or selling a property, you'll need to engage with selling agents to get the best outcome. So to help understand how agents think, today I have special guest Matt Lahood, CEO of the agency, to share his insights today. Now, Matt has been operating as an agent for over 3 decades and personally trained some of the top performing agents in the country. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having us on.
Pleasure. So today's going to be great. Look, we have a little tradition with our podcast, Matt. We have a little quote of the week or thought of the week. And this week, the thought is, life isn't about getting and having, it's about giving and being.
Oh, wow.
By Kevin Cruz. What do you take away from that?
I like that. I think, look, it's never, if you can go through life and it's never about yourself, it's always about everyone else, well, they'll always have your back. That's what I've found personally.
Yeah, awesome.
So I like that saying.
That's great. I think also, having a mindset of abundance, about giving and being there for people. If it's all about taking and having, you're not going to have too many friends around, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So look, Matt, how did you get into real estate? What was your first job and what prompted your interest in the industry?
Interesting story for me, Rich, very quickly, is I started, like, my mum and dad had a couple of properties and they used to lease them out themselves because they couldn't afford a real estate agent, 18% interest rates in those days. And I used to get dragged along as a 12-year-old to come and stand there and work the lifts and help the prospective tenants come up and down. And one day I just said to my mum, this is actually a job, you can do this as a job. And she said, yeah, you can. So okay. I went to work experience in year 10. People offered me a job, went back there after I finished school. Just wanted to do real estate since that day, since I was about 13, 14.
Awesome.
Didn't even look at anything else. Went and understood the licensing and I got all that done when I was 17, 18. Straight into leasing. So I started in leasing because I had the confidence of that because of my mum. And then I got pulled into assistant property management, so I learnt the ropes there. Then the sales agents poached me out of property management, said come and work with us. So I was assistant to the sales agent.
You're obviously good with people, right? So,
possibly so.
Yeah.
And then they said to me, you're good enough now to go out on your own. And I was like 20. So I started as a sales agent when I was 20.
Good on you.
That's 32 years ago now as a sales agent.
Yeah.
And then started growing my business quickly and then got poached by another real estate company to go and join them, then ended up in management. Put money in a business and got asked to run the business whilst your money was in there as well. And yeah, that was...
What a story.
Yeah.
So what sort of prompted your first interest? Did you have a passion for real estate? Did you like the outcome?
I liked the fact that you were able to help people manoeuvre, like, somebody would ring you and say, hey, we want to rent this out. And then you'd find someone who was looking to rent something. They'd be like excited because you were helping them find something. Yeah. And it was just always win-win situations. Yeah. And you were the one in the middle creating it. So I like that part. Other part is I like the freedom of being out and about and sort of running your own business. Like I knew that real estate was about you running your own business. Whether you're working for someone is irrelevant, you're still running your own business at the end of the day. So I say to my team, you're the CEO of your own business.
You are indeed. And you're helping people at a really critical juncture of their life. They're
absolutely.
either, just starting off, getting on the first rung of the property ladder, they've got a family and need space for kids, or they're upsizing, downsizing, or retiring. And that's a really critical. So I think the role of a real estate agent is pretty critical, you know.
Absolutely.
So look, just a quick question about the market. Like
Yep.
we're seeing a lot of different media stories. What's your description of the mood of the market? What do you think is the biggest influx?
Well, I'm pretty lucky, Rich, because I've got offices all over the country and I'm very close to the agents and I visit them. I've been all over the country in the last month: Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Queensland as well. So what I've been finding is pretty well much I think when the interest rates stopped going up for that first point, the market slowed there before that. Then it kicked again after the rates stopped going up. So there was a bit of confidence to come back out again where people, I think, thought the rates were going to stop going up. So we saw that, like, the top end of the market's been incredible. Yeah. There's been record sales broken in the last sort of month to 2 months that I've never seen before in 33 years. So that shows you that the interest rates doesn't affect the top end, right? Not so much right now. Well, there's been no impact to the top end from the rate rises. It seems like that middle to low end, I guess, right across the country's been impacted. But we're still seeing, because of not a lot of properties coming on, a lot of people have bunkered down and gone, okay, if I can't see anything to buy, I'm not going to sell. So that's causing this artificial, I think, it's my personal opinion, so I've analysed it heavily, it's put an artificial floor under the current market. Yeah. If there was a lot more properties on the market, I think the market would be coming right down. Yeah. Right now, it's been artificially held up because there's no competition.
Well, it's the classic Mexican standoff, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
The vendors won't sell because they go, where can I buy?
No, bottlenecked.
And the buyers go, I'm stuck because I can't buy anything.
Yep.
And it's just everyone's just waiting for something to happen.
So the mood is, if something's out there, you've got buyers for it. And as you can see, clearance rates right across the country last Saturday, I think, what are we, mid-July at the moment? Clearance rates were still over 70%.
70%, yeah.
And that's all over the country, right?
Yeah.
60, 70, thereabouts.
Yeah.
Now that tells me straight away that the market has not cooled off. Because in the worst market, the peak we hit 85, 90% around there. It's come back. 70's about I think still booming. About 50, 1 in 2 homes selling every Saturday is about a normal market. Yeah. So I don't think we're there yet. We might see that in spring.
Yeah. I mean, there's been talk of this fiscal cliff, everyone coming off their 2% mortgages and then paying 6% more. What do you think about that theory of distressed selling coming? Do you think in that sort of lower to middle market, we're going to see a bit more of that motivated distressed selling?
Definitely will, because it hasn't impacted yet. But I think a lot of people, because of the media exposure around this, have got in front of it too this time. I hear a lot of people are selling investment properties off to offset, so they don't have to sell the family home. Yeah. I'm also hearing family money's being moved around, like to help as well, like mum and dad, the banker mum and dad are coming into it. Yep. So I think the consumer today has a lot more advice than they sort of did like 20 years ago, and they've had the warning of it and they've been talking about it. So we may not see it as we think, but there'll always be some road wrecks in the middle of these things. It has to be. You can't put the rates up 12 times in a row and not expect some impact to come of it.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think what they call the transmission impact has taken a lot longer because people have had more buffers because of this fixed interest rate period, and people have had cash buffers. So I think, the actual hard lifting or heavy lifting the Reserve Bank's done isn't going to come through till the second half of this year. And I think there's a lot of buyers sort of waiting in the wings thinking, oh great, there's going to be blood on the streets, then I'll pounce. But at the same time, we've got 400,000 migrants coming into the country, all trying to soak up this supply that's really limited. So
and with all the building, it's come to a halt too, Rich, right now. So we're not getting it's not like we're going to get a whole lot of new properties coming on the market, is there?
Exactly.
Because the builders have pulled up stumps.
Well, this is the issue. That's the subject of one of my other podcasts, actually. I talked about exactly that. We need to be building 160 to 180,000 dwellings. And of that, we're probably only going to build 120 this year. So we're 30%, 40% down on building approvals,
I think one of the other things I didn't cover off, which is critical for the listeners, is that the other artificial flaw in the market is, so a lot of the buyers right now have this, I think it's a 90-day approval. So coming towards the end of that approval, they're not wanting to go and get a reapproval. So that's the other thing that's holding the market up, because those buyers are trying to buy on their current approval because they're going to get re-rated again. And in some instances, the rates have gone up 3 times since they got approved.
Exactly.
So they're needing to purchase.
Yeah.
So that's pushing the buyers into the market to purchase with their current buying power.
Exactly.
A lot of people aren't looking at that.
Exactly, and there's a sense of urgency. We see those buyers come onto our books. They go, Rich, I've got a 90-day approval.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm 3 weeks into it. I still can't find anything. Can you get some off markets? And we go, sure, we can help you out. We get access to a lot of off markets, as you know.
Absolutely.
And we appreciate your help in that space. But and there is that sense of urgency. There's also what I call a hard stop at auction. People's pre-approvals are to a limit. So I'm noticing at auctions when I'm watching them, people just stop bidding because they literally cannot go a cent higher. No. And they'll go to their max and that's it. So we're finding there's some good buying at auctions, but a lot of deals are done, as you know, pre-auction as well. So.
Now, if we see more properties come on the market, we're going to see that competition start. People saying, well, if I can't buy it at that price, I'm moving on.
Exactly.
And that's definitely going to pull the market back a bit.
Is there anything else holding sellers back or vendors back from listing a property, do you think, at the moment?
No, I do see a lot of sellers that are going to buy. So there's a lot of owners that are going to sell first as well and then go and buy. That's a tradition that's coming. Wasn't always the case. It was always let's buy first, sell later. Yeah. But now with the uncertainty, so what we are seeing is owners waiting to see if these rates are going to stop going up. Because if they're going to unleash and buy and take another mortgage, they want to get some surety that the rates hikes are. So I think that's the only thing I can see that's probably pulling them back. But apart from that, no, it'd be more the reverse. Can't see anything coming on. So if I buy, I don't want to move twice, go and rent. Because the rental market's such a, like an app, that's another part. We can have a whole podcast on that one. You've probably done that, Rich, as well. But whereas an owner would say, I'll just rent if I can't find it. We'll sell and we'll go and rent for 12 months. Yeah. They won't do that now because they know they can't find it.
Too hard. Yeah, exactly.
So, and the rents are higher than a mortgage.
Exactly. So that's right.
See, there's these phenomenons that we never saw. I've never seen that in 30 years before.
That's right.
Never seen that.
Isn't that weird how you've been in the game 33 decades? I've been almost as long, 25 years myself. And it's like, you think you've seen it all until something else happens, right?
No, not at all. That's the good thing about our industry too. It's forever changing.
So just before we get into the psychology of agents, one more question about the top end of the market. You did touch on it, saying that interest rates really don't affect that top end of the market, but we're seeing, luxury properties in exceptionally high demand. We get expats from overseas. Yep. We get local buyers wanting to upgrade and get something that's even more private or more salubrious. What are you seeing in that top end sort of properties over $5 or $10 million range?
That's exactly what you just said. The expats, definitely one part. A lot of the people who didn't come back post-COVID are still, then there's a lot of family money to reach out there. I mean, I looked at the stats the other day. They were saying 33% of Australians have a mortgage. The other 30% are renting, and the other 3% don't have a mortgage and are debt-free. So that's a 30% of the market that can still got plenty of firepower. And that percentage that don't have a mortgage have got massive growth in the last, 3 years, is fair to say.
Exactly.
So they're sitting on no mortgage, massive growth. They probably bought something for like, maybe 3 million 5 years ago that was now worth 7 or 8 million. They're thinking, hang on a minute, we can unlock that equity and go and buy something for 10 million. Yeah. And the rates relatively, if they did have to borrow, are still very low anyway. Relevant to what you've got. So I think that's what's fueling it as far as I can see. Yeah. And people that have just kept their gunpowder dry. And there's still a lot of money around. We always say that. The cash comes out when the cash dries up.
Definitely. Well, there's still some good opportunities in that market. So, look, I really want to get into the guts of what this podcast is about, and that's psychology of agents. And I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts. But as I kind of said in my intro, a lot of people have a warped perception, unfortunately, of real estate agents. They think they're all just out for themselves and they're just their money makers and they're really just transactional. But let's uncover this. Let's unpack this a bit. Can you explain to me, how does a sales agent approach their job? How do they think?
Well, firstly, Rich, I will say that you're probably right on your assumption there, what people are assuming. There are a percentage of those people. But there's a percentage of rogue doctors, there's a percentage of rogue mechanics.
Like in any industry.
There's a percentage of rogue chefs, there's a percentage of everyone, right? But I think on balance, from my experience over the years, I think 95% I'd say of agents go out there every day to do the right thing by people. It's the 5% to give people and the faults I've noticed that come when I've managed big super teams for a long time, agents of 300-400 agents. So if there's any problems, I'll know about them, right? And when I actually look at the problems or complaints that I've had over the last 20 years in my leadership roles, they've normally come out of lack of communication. It's not like someone tried to go out there today and rip, you off or do something dodgy. That was the lack of communication. The other thing that we often get caught out by in the industry, which is a buyer might come to us and say, we're making an offer, we're going to do this, we're going to buy it. And we've got other buyers that we have to prepare for that. And often that original buyer might pull out or something. So you're automatically assumed that it's the agent making up a story or it's like, and this is where the industry is, and it's the poor communication around that makes the agent look, the spotlight goes, oh, you said you had a buyer and they had that price and this and the other. And it's the lack of preparation that an agent may do with an owner with their price expectations initially. They might go in and expect that. So the psychology around an agent is, I think, as I said, 95% of them get up every day to do the right thing, but it's often their lack of communication and following the process. Because real estate's like no different to anything else. It's a process. You've got listing the property, getting a photography done, agreeing on a price point, communicating that price point to everybody, being transparent all the way through there, getting agreement off the owner to be transparent, talking to the buyers in exactly the transparent way, saying the same thing to everybody so nobody's guessing. So
let me just stop you for 1 sec, because that's a really important point around pricing. Because pricing, I get a lot of complaints from customers or potential clients, and they say, look, pricing in real estate in Australia is so messy, it's so opaque. We're sort of like, it's a game of cat and mouse, and it says price, contact agent. What does that mean? Auction, there's no auction guide, right? And there's different laws in different states, right? In New South Wales, we can't use offers over anymore, for example.
Of course.
But tell me about how an agent approaches a vendor and how they determine what price they're going to recommend that the vendor sells at. How does that work?
Well, the first thing I'll say to start that, Rich, before the process, because we're going to go into process around that, is one thing I always say to my owners, and have done for years because I'm a real estate agent, when we sit down, we say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, first thing to note, real estate doesn't have a recommended retail price. So that's the first thing I say to them. So they go, oh, because, Rich, I guess we're all used to going into a Woolworths or a Coles and seeing $9.99, or even a car yard and seeing $39,990 or whatever. We're all used to seeing this. Now, the problem with real estate is they're not a Hyundai, they're not a Mercedes-Benz, they're not a loaf of bread. They're all different. You can go down the street and every single home's different. So I think when people understand that, now a block of apartments might be different, where you've got 6, they all look the same exactly, but they'll all be different too, because one will be on the 2nd floor, one will be on the 3rd floor, one will have a view, won't have a view, one will have parking, one won't have parking. One will have sun, won't have sun, and they're in the same building. They'll be priced differently. So the problem is real estate doesn't recommend retail price, the first thing. On the pricing, the best agents in the country will go to an owner with evidence. And they won't go back more than 3 months, right? Because the valuers won't go back more than 3 to 6 months. So as an agent, you shouldn't be going to an owner and saying, look, this sold a year ago. We think we can get, it's about the process and how tight you keep it. So what we coach our agents to do is go to an owner and show them a house that's not as good, a house that's probably better than theirs, and something that's very similar than theirs. And because the reason you do that is because that's what the valuers are going to do when they go to price it for the buyer. And when the buyer comes through, they've probably seen those other 3 properties. So it's a simple world, right?
That's what we
don't
do.
Have to guess.
We do the similar thing in reverse, right? So when you're explaining a process that we do very much at the back end of our clients. So when we're buying for a client, we'll nominate a specific property, shortlist it, take them to see it. If they say, Rich, we like it, let's buy it. We do a detailed appraisal, and our appraisals are based on bank valuations. So we typically do 5 or 6 comparable sales, and what we do is we look at things like the floor plan, the construction, the slope, the aspect, the position within the suburb, and we have 9 criteria, and then we evaluate it as whether it's inferior, superior, or comparable, just like you said.
Well, that's exactly why you guys are where you are.
And then you determine a price, and typically we're usually within a 3% accuracy. We track it, and we're normally within 3%.
Well, there you go.
And that's the value we bring to the transaction. But like you, it's really good to hear that on your side, in your process, that you're giving that evidence-based approach, because I assume, like any vendor, they think their castle is worth more than
Absolutely.
what it really is. We
But
all
that's,
do, right?
we go into every owner's home knowing they want more than what it's worth.
That's it,
right?
yeah.
But that's just life we're in, right?
Yeah.
Now, on that, Rich, what's really important to point out, remember I said at the beginning, 95% of agents wake up, do the right thing.
Yeah.
So what do the 5% do on pricing, right? They don't look at the comparables. They don't look at the dates.
Yeah.
They fling it and wing it. They turn up with no preparation. They go, oh, yeah, Rich, look, this should be around 800. We think it's, we saw, around that. So, or they go and they do the worst thing, as they say to the owner, what do you want for it? And the owner says $1 million. They go, oh, yeah, we think we can get that. Sign here, press hard, second copy's yours. And they don't have the conversation around, no, we're not going to get $1 million. So when the buyer comes in, the buyers, then you talked about, they've got an owner thinking $1 million, they've got an agent who's promised $1 million, it's only worth 800. They go and do all their pest and buildings and everything, employ you guys in to help them and all that. You go there kicking chairs around because the agent's 200 grand over the market. You get to auction, bids, that passes in. This is the whole story of this 5% we're talking about, right? And then what happens is 6 weeks later, either the agent gets kicked off the job, another one comes in and sells it for 800, right? That I've seen that more times than I've had hot lunches, right? And you probably have too. So that's the 5%, and that's the bit that people say agents have got a bad name because they just they think they'll get the listing and they'll get it sold. It doesn't work like that.
I mean, that's really what do you call buying the listing?
Buying the listing.
Really it is. I mean, I don't tend to see much of that these days, but occasionally you do see a very few percent.
No, the reason you're not seeing it because the market's been able to hide it. So when what's that Warren Buffett saying? You know, when the tide goes out,
you see his pants down.
You'll see who's wearing swimmers.
So talk to me more through the negotiation process because, by law, a selling agent has to put the vendor their best interest first. So your job as a sales agent is to get the highest price. My job as a buying agent is to secure the property, but get it at a fair price. I mean, realistically, particularly in the high value suburbs, high demand suburbs, I'm typically not going to get a bargain. Great if I can, but my job is to make sure I'm picking the right property at the right price for the client. But talk to me about how you as a sales agent approaches the negotiation with a potential buyer.
So what we'll do is, if it's obviously auctions are very prevalent in a lot of the markets we operate in, so there'll be an auction date. There'll be a guide based on the comparable sales. So what we like to do, Rich, which think's really good, is the three sales we give the owner to list the property out. They're the three sales we give the buyer. We tell them, look, when we sat with the owner, here's the 3 sales we gave the owner. And we think we're comparing it to those 3. And the owner's signed up with us based on those 3. So we think, and then we let the buyer decide, because real estate doesn't recommend a retail price. We'll let the buyer decide what it's worth, right? If you want to come in before auction, give us an offer. And they might say, well, that one has a pool, yours doesn't have a pool, and it's sold for 1.2, so we're going to make an offer of $1,050,000. So that's in line normally, potentially, with what we've told the owner. So then it's a case of once we achieve an offer, if they want to buy before auction, we'll then go to the other parties and let them know there's a pre-auction offer in. So we might bring the auction forward, which often can be the cleanest process.
And do you reveal that offer to the other buyers?
Yes, because at the end of the day, if the owner's going to accept it, we need to
make it transparent.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's like an auction bid. That's no different. I don't see personally as an agent why that's if you're bringing the auction forward, because that's what you're effectively doing. Why, if you go to an auction, you're going to see what the first bid is.
That's right.
Well, we're going to say to the owner, hey, hang on, this bid's a first bid, but it's being accepted, so it's on the market. So we're on the market now, so what I want you to do as a buyer, if you want it, you're going to have to put the next auction bid in before auction. Some of the cleaner practices, those which if we've got more than 1 or 2 buyers on something pre-auction, is to continue to auction, because you've already set that. But often you get a buyer that comes in and they really want it, and they're paying above where the owner's expectations are, and where your buyer's expectations are. So often then we would then recommend bringing either, I'd go selling beforehand, but sometimes if you've got a lot of buyers, it might be better to bring the auction date forward. If you've got more than, like say it might be 5, 10 buyers on the property, because it becomes very messy selling something before auction when you've got 5 to 10 buyers interested in it. It's going to end up.
And what do you say to those really sceptical buyers when the agent tells the buyer, or first buyer, hey, Mr. Buyer, I've got an offer and it's 50,000 above, and that buyer goes, "Oh, how do I know? How do I know it's real?" What do you say to that
No, well,
person?
we position it a bit differently. We will never go to those buyers and say, "Oh, we've got this." We'll say, "Look, just keeping you up to speed. We've received an offer which the owner's accepted, and the property is going to be sold in the next 48 hours or 72, whatever we decide the timeline is. It will be sold prior to auction, but our duty of care to our owner and to yourselves, and the buyer knows this, is we have to give everyone else the opportunity to perform on the property."
Yeah. Yep.
So that way it clears it.
Good. Yeah,
right?
cool. So what are the biggest weaknesses that you see with sales agents in the way they operate?
Not following the process, one.
Yeah.
2, trying to rush things. 3, not backing themselves. 4, not clear communication. When I've had to pick up a mess and clean up anything, it was like, "Oh, they told me they were going to get back to me," or "They said that you had to Friday, but it sold on Thursday," or they said, so poor communication,
Yes.
not clear. And my favourite thing, which I learned, and probably learnt the hard way when I was a junior, was I get if a buyer says to me they're out, I get them to send me a message to confirm it.
Yeah.
Because I've had people, and this is where we get called out and hung out to dry, they said, "Oh, we would have paid more," and all sorts of stuff.
They're playing games with you.
So I don't have that problem, right? I've never had that problem where somebody says they would have paid more, because I'll say to you, "I need you to send me a text to tell me you're out. You can't pay any more."
Yeah.
And I'll get all those text messages and give them to the owner before we sign a contract.
Yeah, perfect. That's good. Exhaust all your options. That's great. Yeah.
Because a lot of people say, you've probably seen it before, right? I would have paid more. Well, hang on.
If I'd known, I would have paid more.
Then the owner doesn't want to hear that, right? They've just entrusted you.
They want to know the agent's done their job.
Correct.
Yeah. But you're right. I think the biggest weakness I see is around communication and expectations.
Communication.
It's all about, if you're an agent and you're setting the expectation of a vendor, they're going to achieve a certain price based on comparables, and you're nowhere near that.
Absolutely.
That's just devastating for the owner. Whereas
the other faults I've seen too, Rich, working with is rushing to get rush. And hassling and hustling and all these sorts of words. Biggest decision in people's life that they're making, I've seen people take longer to buy a dress than buy a house.
most people, honestly, most people spend more time planning their annual holidays
well,
than
that's
they do
exactly
buying
right.
a property, right?
So
that's
you have
why we're
to
in
stop
business,
back and think, this is something you're going to take a monster mortgage on for 25 years.
Yeah.
Give the person some time.
Yeah.
Give the owner some time who's been there for 40 years, it's in the family, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's give everyone some time.
Yeah.
We've got time. And if you understand that as an agent, you understand empathy and you understand, people will trust you.
Yes.
They'll just go with you, right?
That's it. Yeah. So, question around remuneration, commission. How
Yep.
should sales agents be remunerated, do you believe?
I think the best way to remunerate an agent, you're talking from a seller's perspective?
Yeah, from a seller's perspective, yeah.
I love performance-based commissions because it cuts out all the fluff with agents telling the owners they can get this price that they can never get them. And so what I think is a fair way of doing it is the agent and the owner agrees on their dream price and they set the bonus above that dream price. And then underneath the dream price, they put a lower split in to what the agent would initially want. So everyone's got an insurance policy now. I've got an insurance policy. If I work 7 days a week, 365 at that owner's house, and I get more than they want, I'm getting a big fee out of it. And they're getting more than they want, so it's irrelevant what fee they pay me. If I shortcut it and don't follow the process and wing it and fling it and whatever, I'm going to get penalised.
Yep, great, perfect.
So that would be my favourite way of doing things.
Sounds good, fantastic. A question in sort of how buyers should approach agents. Like a lot of people are treating agents as dirt. Like they just treat them. I see it all the time.
Yep.
They just think that they're machines and just treat them like crap. But I think a much better way to treat an agent is professionally. That's personally how I do it. But what's your view? How should buyers approach selling agents so they can get the best outcome?
So you're saying if they're wanting to buy the property?
Wanting to buy
Well,
the
I
property.
think first of all is to be clear. Look, we're very interested in it. We want to buy it. What do we need to do? Can you help us buy the property?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. There is a lot of game playing around that we don't tell the agent and all that. Now, I think that today with the level of restrictions on agents around compliance, it's going to backfire on the buyer because they need to disclose. So the first thing I say to any buyer that's ever interested in any property is I say, put everything in writing to the agent. Say you're interested, put an offer in writing, the reason why you want to buy it and attach it to a contract And if it's in New South Wales, in a sense, probably if it's before auction with a no cooling off period in there.
66W.
Yeah,
Yep.
and if it is subject to finance or it's a prior to auction, it's for sale, whatever. All the terms are in writing. So write a covering letter and hand it to them, because then they've got to respond to it. So it was a he said, she said conversation with nothing in writing. That to me is the worst way to handle things, because you'll find that a buyer that complains will say, "Oh, we asked them to do this," and the agent's running back to the office. They got 16 people trying to ring them, and they've forgotten what the buyer said or whatever, and it's not in writing. Well, again, that's the process. So if it was me role playing that process, Rich, you were coming into my property, and you said the best way for you to play me would be to say, Matt, I'm really interested in this property. What do I need to do to secure it? Well, I as the agent would say to you, the best practice is, look, send me an offer in writing, all the reasons where you've arrived, how you've arrived at the price, your terms, your conditions, everything, and I'll pass that straight on to the owner.
Yeah, perfect.
So what I've done is I've shifted the risk now off me, and I've given it to the owner. No, it's not a risk, but I'm saying I could never be accused of saying the offer didn't make it to the owner, whatever.
Yeah. Well, that was another question: is like, are all offers presented? Like I hear, from anecdotally, oh, my offer was never accepted, or never presented. Do you ever hear that?
Well, I've heard it, but it's that's illegal. I mean, I've heard agents saying that they're not going to pass that on because it's an insult, which I sort of get that too. But then their job should be, so that's not doing anything wrong by the owner, right? But I've heard that I think every owner should know about everything that happened on their property.
Yeah. I mean, if the property's listed at $1 million and someone offers 600, the agent's often been told by hey, if you're going to get anything under 900, just tell them I'm not interested.
Yeah, well, that's right. But I think it's still important for you to pass all offers on that by law, right? Yeah. But I guess an insult offers, because you're causing yourself a problem as the agent, because you're looking like now you're trying to get the owner to take a less price.
Exactly.
So you want to be careful of that, but that just comes with trust.
Yeah. Back to your point about just how offers are made, though, I'm very transparent in the way I deal with agents, and I've trained all my team, as I'm sure you've trained all your team through process, but I say to my team, all offers are made in writing. I say we can give a verbal at the open, but we actually have a set out structure. We offer the price, we offer the terms, we give the comparable sales, and then it just becomes a professional discussion between a professional selling agent, a professional buying agent, and then it's up to the vendor to decide. And look, some vendors end up being really greedy, right? Other vendors are realistic, and we try to satisfy the terms. We might do a longer settlement, shorter settlement, whatever. We try to make it work and have a negotiation.
But you're like me, Rich, and that thing. So I think it makes the agent's job easier if you put it in writing.
Absolutely.
Because then they just pass that to the owner. And the owner can sit down and read it all night 3 or 4 times and start thinking, hang on a minute, this is where I need to be.
And we're genuine. Like if and again, we don't just have one property on our shortlist for our client. We're going to have multiple options, because we might get a no here, might get a yes here, whatever. But we just make sure that the offer we put in is going to either be accepted or we move on.
And the good thing is, if any other buyer challenged anything later on or something, you've got it in writing. That's beautiful.
That's it, exactly. A couple of little anecdotes I'd like to ask you. What's been one of your most memorable sales or your best sale?
Oh, me personally? Well, look, I've been retained, you might not know this, by the Australian Turf Club for 25 years now. I've been their agent for the Australian Jockey Club originally. And I've sold 65 properties for them over the last 10 years. And I got to sell all of the properties around the racecourse so they could build that new fancy stand down there.
Okay.
And I've done all of their work, and I've sold sites for 10 million, 12 million. For them, and a whole lot of things. I've met a lot of colourful identities down there. One of the best things I think I did was I had a site down there on Doncaster Avenue which I put together for the Turf Club, and there was 3. There was one either side of it. I ended up getting the 2 properties in the middle and putting the whole thing together and selling that to a client.
Fantastic.
So I've had that was like $10-12 million.
And how long did that take to put together?
It took about 3 months, that one,
Oh, that's short.
But I had the property either side but didn't have the ones in the middle. And I had all these buyers saying, if you can get the ones in the middle. So I convinced these people in the middle and made it really easy for them too. We didn't charge any commission to get, so I could put the bigger deal together.
That's perfect. Yeah,
so
that's smart.
there's a few, and I had every single one of those properties but look, we've had some incredible properties. I've been involved with the agents. For me too, in the last number of years, I've had a couple of clients of mine that have given me some houses that just coming out of COVID that we thought were in the high fours and sold for 6.2 million. And I've had sold over 2,500 properties.
Mark has been pretty kind to you.
There's a few ones that stand out, like those sites that were just, you're challenged to put it together.
Well, sites
and
I
got it together.
Well done. Well, that's
and got the resales and all that.
Well done. Yeah, it just reminds me of when I did in Waverley, actually, just up the road from your office here. And one of the Uniting Care, the stupid property officer sold off. This is like 20 years ago. They sold off 15 of the properties around the facility.
Oh, really?
And then they employed me to buy them all back again at twice the price. Ended up getting 8 out of the 15, but that was enough to do their master plan.
Wow.
But that was, at the time they shouldn't have sold them. Literally, they shouldn't have sold them. But it took 2 or 3 years over time to gradually meet with the owners, have cups of tea, coffee, whatever, and get rapport. And a few died along the way, but we ended up. You just got to be patient in the game. So, what's another question for you? What's the most rewarding thing you like about being a sales agent, or your sales agent team find rewarding?
Well, today my role's obviously leading the group now, and I've got like a lot of teams. So for me personally, today it's about seeing everyone else succeed, seeing agents grow their database, grow their business. Get testimonials from their owners sent to me. That's exciting. For me, when I was an agent, I guess it was the trust. So, and repeat business for me is a big one. I've got all my clients from 1988 when I started in real estate, still today, that still call me. A lot of them are older now, but their kids still ring me.
Nice.
And to me, because I hear about real estate agents and what people think about them, that's what we're talking about today. But for me personally, I've never had that experience because I just looked after. When I got into real estate, Dad pulled me aside, my dad, and he goes, look, it's not a very good industry. And back then, mate, seriously, it was rated 1 above tow truck drivers, I think. And I don't know if it's moved too much further up. And I couldn't understand why it was a bad industry because I was like 17. Dad goes, no, they don't tell you the truth. He said, so what we're going to say, son, we know a lot of people in the area because I was born and bred in Randwick and Coogee, and my mum and dad knew a lot of locals. They all grew up, all their kids grew up together. And they said, if you're going to get in the industry, don't give the family a bad name. So if somebody offers you a bribe or tell them you're not interested and come home and we'll give you the money. What you would have missed out on. So I was like, wow, that's interesting. And I was 17, so I didn't know what to do. And I've been offered all the stuff over the years. Sell a prior and give you my house and, sell me this and I'll give you 50 grand. Or I've been offered heaps. And I haven't taken a single cent or done anything because my mental comes back to that 17-year-old, but also comes back to all the people that have kept giving me business. I've got a lot more business off looking after people than I would have got by taking a commission to get someone's house to sell if they ripped an owner off or something. It's not what I wanted to be doing.
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's if you cross the line of integrity, your reputation's shot.
Gone.
It takes decades to build a reputation. One mistake to ruin it. So I think you're absolutely right.
And I think that's why I became the leader in that. I'm never set out to be a real estate leader. Let me tell you, very happy being an agent, looking after my own vendors.
Well, you've done a great job, mate.
No, I said it. I think the agents picked up that morals and wanted to be managed by that leadership.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Well, I've got 2 more questions for you before I let you go. What's been your own personal best property investment?
Oh, I've got a couple of. Bought a couple of units early on in my life. Instead, I'll never forget. I was going to buy a brand new car for $40,000. Or I was going to put that $40,000 on an apartment in Coogee near the beach. Now, I really wanted the car, and my folks sat me down. They said, "You're an imbecile. Like, your car's fine. What you got."
How old
I
were
was
you then?
21.
Perfect.
Never forget it.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, the past CEO of Aussie Home Loans, wrote my first home loan.
Wow.
And he was only my age.
John Simons?
James, his nephew.
James.
Yeah. So he actually wrote my first home loan.
Wow.
And he was like 19 or 20 and starting off in Aussie when they were no one, right?
Yeah.
And so that was still, I have a relationship with those guys from that day. But anyway,
And have you still got that apartment
yeah,
today?
I do.
And what did you pay for it?
180,000.
And what's it worth
Right,
today?
it's probably worth about 1.4 million.
There you go, brilliant.
And we actually moved into it when we were married, like my wife and I moved in, and our son was born there.
Wow.
So he's 25 now.
Yeah.
But all fondly remembers it.
Yeah.
Now, funny thing is, what's ironic, because he actually works with me. He's in leasing here, and he leases.
There you go.
So he wasn't even born
Well, it just goes to show, by the depreciating asset.
But my dad always reminds me today, because he's 82, he's long retired, but he goes, hey, remember that, what's that car worth you reckon that you would have put the 40 grand into?
That's good. That's
and
good.
I keep going, oh yeah. But I've taught my kids that sort of same thing. But when you're 18, 20, 21, you're not interested.
You're not thinking long term.
Nobody cares about property, right?
That's right.
And they forced me to do it, actually.
Good
and they
on
actually said, if you don't, because it was a good apartment, they said, if you don't buy that apartment, we're going to buy it. And I went, hang on a minute, this is pretty good. Excuse me.
That's it.
Excuse me.
It's great.
Excuse me. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the first one.
That's great. And tell me, just to finish up, Matt, what was the best property tip that you could share with our audience today?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, the best tip I'm going to say is that if you really want to buy something, don't try and play the market. So what I mean by that, if it's right there now and it's going to suit your family and what you need now, don't try and work out, is the market peaked, is it bottomed, is it middle?
Around the timing, you're saying don't try and pick the exact timing.
Don't try and pick the market, because it's going to be irrelevant in 10 years' time.
Yeah, that's great.
That's probably the best tip.
Yeah.
So I've seen people over the years trying to play the market. I'll wait till it comes off, and they've missed the actual property they want.
Yep.
So, as I said, real estate before doesn't have a recommended retail price, and they're all different.
Yeah.
So if you see the property you want,
Exactly.
it's really irrelevant whether you picked it at the bottom or the top end of the market.
Yeah.
I've bought a few properties over the years, and I've paid a record nearly every time.
Yeah.
Because when you're a real estate agent, you get
the inherent value.
No, but the other thing is too is that people go, oh, real estate must be buying it. Like they'll beat against you, right? Because if you see value. So I've always paid a premium on everything I've bought above market.
You just have to use us to find it for you.
Yeah, I should. And the thing is, but I've looked back 10 years, 15 years later, and it's been irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly.
Would I paid another 50 back then if I knew?
Yeah.
No problem.
Exactly.
But you don't. So I think the biggest thing I'm doing for my own personal advice is don't try and, if you see the property, just buy it.
Brilliant. Love the advice, Matt. That's brilliant. I can totally endorse that. Totally agree with that. Don't try and pick the market.
Don't try and pick
let the time do the heavy lifting.
Yes.
I've always found buy properties, never sell unless you really have to or have a change of circumstance, and just let the compound growth work. Once you get into the year 15, 20, 25 of holding that property, the capital growth appreciation is phenomenal. And just holding it.
If you're holding it and it's an investment now, well, it hasn't done anyone wrong right now.
Yeah, great.
All right.
Well, Matt Lahood from the agency, thank you so much for sharing your tips today. Really appreciate it. I'm Rich Harvey, CEO of Property Buyer. If you do have any other questions for us, please reach out to us on propertybuyer.com.au, or you can send us an email to info@propertybuyer.com.au. Thanks again. We look forward to having you on the podcast again very soon. Thanks for being with us on another Property Buyer podcast. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please click on the SpeakPipe link and we'll answer this during the next episode. If you're looking to buy a residential or commercial property in the near future and would like to get the added advantage of having a buyer's advocate on your side, then please reach out to my team today and send us your inquiry, and we'd be delighted to help. Please visit our website at propertybuyer.com.au, where you can stay updated with all my latest market updates, weekly blogs and live suburb profiles to help you make better property decisions. We look forward to connecting with you again on the next Property Buyer podcast.